thank you for blowing in to join us. A very warm welcome from a very windy Johannesburg. I'm Paul Rotherham. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to this, another edition of the Coaching Hour. It's brought to you in proud partnership with Coaches Network South Africa. Nice to have you watching us, if that's what you're doing at the moment. We are on YouTube. We are on Facebook right now live, so you can interact with us if that's where you're watching this. A very warm welcome. Nice to have you here. I'm joined by Mary and Mareka, who are also members of Coaches Network South Africa. My sidekicks, are you well, ladies?
Well, thank you.
Warm and
Lovely.
well.
Fantastic. It's definitely got chilly. I'm not sure where in the country you are or where in the world you might be, but let me tell you, the cold has officially arrived. My daughter was leaving for college this morning, and she said the real feel is zero with the wind chill at the moment. The wind is howling. But thank you for joining us and making time to enjoy the content that we've put together for you in this, another edition of the Coaching Hour. Mareka, we've got an interesting gentleman who's joining us today.
Absolutely, we do. We have Dr. Abatzidis with us this morning. He's a new Insights certified VIP life coach, founder of Influential Life Coaching, and he's also a published author of the book called Life Outside Your Comfort Zone, Better and Beyond All Expectations. Good morning, Dr. Abatzidis. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Great. So tell us a bit more about, how you came, to be a life coach. Just before we actually went live, we had a conversation of, the two worlds that you actually find yourself in. So please tell our listeners and everyone that's watching a bit more about you and how you got into the coaching sphere.
Well, when I was a child, I was living in Greece. I lived there for 6 years, and I had a young dog that got hurt in a dog fight. And I felt so sorry for the poor thing that I made a decision as a child at 8 years of age that I was going to be a vet, because I hated that position of not knowing how to help the dog. And that just stuck with me. I've met many individuals that have told me that when they were young, they also wanted to be vets, but none of them became vets. I was one of those few that kind of stuck it through and went all the way. And then during high school, you have to choose your subjects towards your career. And when I did my research, two more things of interest came up. One was psychology, and the other one was looking at how to write books and writing in general. And I get that from my dad, because he was a writer. He used to write poetry and songs and many other things. And but the other two, the latter two, got turned down, so veterinary science became the focus, and I completed that. But while I was working in private practice, I still had that bug in me of, how do I help people? How do I apply psychology? Where do I learn more? And then life coaching became a thing at that point. It was a new kind of concept that came into the market. I researched it. I found New Insights South Africa. I applied, got through, studied, finished that. And then I still wanted to write. So I decided I was going to write a book, which was a combination of my story of how I got to complete veterinary science. I had many hurdles along the way, just like every other student. But then what I did is I took each one of those hurdles and I applied a life coaching concept to it. So if you get the book, you'll see that each chapter has got, the first part is my story, which is sequential, and it takes you through the journey. And then the second part of that chapter is the life coaching concept that applies to that. So although it's a nice to read story, it also has some lessons to take out of it.
Okay, wow. And you decided that we're going to talk about opportunities today. And as it sounds, that you created a lot of opportunities for yourself, and well done for sticking with your passion from the age of 8 and obviously then applying it. Not a lot of people stick with that because we get influenced, by so many things around us. Why did you choose to talk about opportunities today?
I chose that because, number one, I think that opportunities are around us all the time. And I think the reason people miss them is because they don't have a clear enough goal in their heads. So for me, for example, I started out with veterinary science in my head, and everything was rooted and focused towards that one endeavor. So anything that was anyway remotely associated with veterinary science, I grabbed onto. And that's how you find opportunities. And I think that's where a lot of people get mixed up. They have a fuzzy idea in their head, but they don't have a clear goal. They don't have a focus. And I think if people are focused enough, then they will see the opportunities. And I'll give you a silly example. You know, you go to a braai and you talk to people, and often you'll hear a comment like, one day I'm going to have a nice car. A nice car is not specific enough. There are millions of nice cars driving past you every day. But unless you know it's a black Maserati with cream seats, a 6 leather gearbox, you will not recognize it when it drives past you. And it's the same with opportunities. Unless you make it clear in your head, what is it that you're looking for and what it looks like, you're going to miss those opportunities. So for me, that is a big message that I keep driving through to all my life coaching clients, the students at the university at Onderstepoort, to the vets. It's exactly the same, because they come out of university, and that applies to all students really. They come out of university, now they've left this protected environment that has a lot of structure, and they don't know what to do with their skills. They've now finished a course or a degree, and they don't know what the ideal working situation is. They don't know what the ideal company is that they want to work for, because they haven't made it clear in their goals. They haven't sat down and described it for themselves. And that's how they miss opportunities. Then they'll end up bouncing from employer to employer.
Would it be safe to say, Doctor, that it's actually not as easy as it sounds to figure out what you want out of life?
I agree. And the reason it's not easy is because we don't get taught these things. We know it's because we're life coaches, and we've been exposed to that kind of material. But even my dad, for example, he was a fantastic father. He was very philosophical. He was always keen to sit down and chat and work things out. He didn't know any of the things that I have learned through life coaching. So when it came to structuring your approach to a problem or an endeavor or a project, he really couldn't guide me. As much as he loved me, he didn't know how. It's not because he didn't want to. And the same goes with people that keep putting you off certain goals that you announce. So I was giving the example to Mareka earlier, how I was a vet, I was trained as a vet, I was working in private practice. But the minute I announced to everyone that I wanted to be a life coach, everyone started to suppress that dream. And the reason for that is because they can't see themselves doing what you're doing. So their natural instinct is to kick back and go back to their comfort zone, which is what they know. They can see what a vet is because they might have been to a clinic and they might have consulted with one. But they don't know what a life coach is. So the minute they can't picture it in their heads, their natural default is to move away from it. But to us, it looks like rejection. It looks like they're not approving of your dream. And it's not, they're not doing it because they don't love you. They're just doing it because they don't know any better. So don't judge them for it. It's just the way it is. It's human nature.
Are you out of veterinary science altogether now? Is it something that's behind you?
No, I still work. I work for a veterinary company at the moment. So that's my day job. The coaching happens in the evenings and the weekends. And so I kind of do both. And in fact, I've incorporated a lot of my coaching with my team at work. So often when we have team meetings and especially sales conferences and that sort of thing and training conferences, there's always life coaching built into that, which is fantastic.
That's very fascinating. I think you're the first coach that I've met, that operates in two very different worlds. And what I mean by that is, as a vet works with animals, not people. And you have the psychology and you decided to do both, where naturally people would think that, okay, I need to only do one. I have to choose the one or the other, although you've embraced both, which is quite a message of we don't have to stick with only one career path necessarily. That's
That's
interesting.
that's a very valid point, and it's something that I use often with people that, especially people that lose their jobs or they get retrenched,
Mm,
because in your mind you get trained or maybe brainwashed to think you're just one thing. They've put you in a box.
mm,
You're a vet. That's it. Full stop. And that's hogwash. We all have multiple skills, right? Just because I
mm,
work as a vet during the day does not mean that's all I know how to do. And
mm,
often when I talk to people that have lost their jobs or they're looking to go from one place to another, I often encourage them to sit down and think about all the other skills they have and how to
mm,
employ those. And probably one of the best examples I can give you is a very close family friend of mine who, during COVID times, was retrenched, lost her job. And immediately, what she did, she had a very positive outlook. She sat down and she thought to herself and reflected and said, I like cooking, I like craft, but I'm also an accountant. So she did all three while she was between jobs. So what she
mm,
did is she started to cook. She opened up her own little business, cooking for people and delivering meals to people's homes. At the same time, made craft, went to a local market and was selling her craft. And if accounting opportunities came up, she took them on as individual business. And she survived COVID, I won't say unharmed, but she did a lot better than other people. And the
mm,
only reason she was able to do that is because she was wise enough to reflect upon her own skills and just back herself and say, I can do this. I can cook. I
mm.
can make craft.
Yes. I think it's very important what you're mentioning that um, sometimes I find that people sit back and wait for opportunities to come to them. Let's say you've studied in a certain, career path, and that's what you are trained in. Now you're in that box. So if there's no, let's say, job adverts, for that specific job, you kind of sit back and say, but there's no opportunities. Instead of having
Yes.
that mindset of, let me create opportunities for myself. And that's very much a mindset thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
Mm.
think
And I think it takes a bit of a support structure to keep you going, but also just back yourself.
Mm.
Sorry, I think Paul, you wanted to say something?
no, I was just going to say that I think many opportunities are born out of necessity,
Mm,
where you don't necessarily want to do what you start doing. And I'm sure your friend, as talented as she is in cooking and crafting, you might find that at that point, if you'd said to her, hey, how would you feel about starting a craft store at the local market? Her immediate answer, when she was still a practicing accountant full time earning a salary, her immediate answer to that would possibly have been, well, no, not really, because I'm quite happy with
yeah,
what I'm doing. So I think very
you're right.
often necessity is what drives us and what pushes us. And it can be quite sad because sometimes it shouldn't be out of necessity that we're making those choices. It should
I
be out of
agree.
the realization that there's so much more to life. And if I look at my career path, I knew from a very young age that radio was what resonated with me, and it was something that I would be consumed by for hours upon hours, way more than people around me. And so I knew radio was always what I wanted to do. However, I think the mistake I made is that for probably a good 20 years of my life, as much as I enjoyed it and loved every moment of being on the various stations I was on, I'm still doing it now. I never really allowed myself to realize my other talents and potential. And there are many things that I'm good at. And in a way,
Mm.
what you said earlier about being in a box, that is so typical of what happens in life. We're given these titles and we almost become the title. And I think many people would
Yeah,
become much more than what they are if that title was never given. So even now, if I think about it on my email signature, it says radio guy and Lego maniac. Because obviously I'm a huge fan of Lego and it's one of my businesses that I'm involved with now. But am I really a radio guy? Well, I might be, but that doesn't define me and shouldn't define me. And I think very often it does. And in many ways, even for us in the coaching space, saying, well, I am a dot, dot, dot coach, that in a way, I think can also be limiting or almost disabling in a sense, because that's now how we see ourselves. And very often we're way more than just that.
Yeah, I agree, 100%. I think one of the most radical responses to what do you do for a living that I've ever heard before is someone who's answered that question by saying, whatever it takes.
Hmm.
And immediately what he did is he just threw away that box and said, I'm not an accountant, I'm not a vet, I'm not a radio host, but I'll do whatever it takes to achieve my goals. And good for him. I was inspired by that. That was really something very cool.
I think it was Richard Branson. I stand to be corrected. You might know Richard Branson, who said that whenever anybody asks me if I'm able to do something, I say yes, and then figure it out. So
Yeah,
regardless of whether I actually have the ability at the time, I can be
yeah,
completely in the dark, but I'll say yes, and then go and make a way. And I think
because it's a decision. Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
probably a good attitude to have.
Yeah,
Doctor,
Yeah,
I like what you said when you, in the beginning, when you said about the opportunities. And the reason why people don't see opportunities because they haven't got clarity.
Hmm.
Can you just elaborate a bit on that? Because sometimes when you say to somebody, you have to be clear about what you want.
yeah.
They don't know what you
Alright.
mean. You know, what
So
do you mean?
I'll take you back to the car example because I think it's something that's kind of relatable and people can understand. So I remember once I had to buy a new vehicle. So I pick up a car magazine and then you look at all these wonderful cars and geez, you like all of them, and they all look great. But then what I did is I actually put up almost a spreadsheet on a huge whiteboard in my study. And I had all the specs, all the different cars, everything you can think of. And you might say, well, that's your personality. That's how you process information. That's one way to do it. There are different ways to do it, right? So for me, the spreadsheet is what I did. And so in my head, immediately I started to clarify what is it that I like and what is it that I don't like within the cars that I listed. If you're not the spreadsheet type of guy, then what I would suggest is, because there are three learning modalities, as you probably know. You get the auditory, where you need to listen to things. You get the visual, where you need to visualize your actual goal and what you have to do. And then you get the more pragmatic type people that have to be involved in the process. So if you're the visual type, then go to the dealerships, sit in the vehicle, feel the car, take it for a test drive, which is part of being pragmatic and kinesthetic and feeling the process, right? Because sooner or later, you're going to feel or see or experience something that you don't like in that car. It immediately starts to narrow your field. Suddenly you go from 20 cars down to maybe 3. And then it makes it a lot easier for you to make that choice. If you're still stuck on 20, go drive, test drive some more vehicles, sit in another one, feel the steering wheel, switch on the engine, listen to the engine. I mean, there's a lot of cars that look fantastic on the outside, but for me, I like peace, so I don't like the loud cars. So for me, if I switch on the engine and it makes more noise than I would like, immediately I would have taken that off the list. So this is for me a process of just clarifying which car do I really want. You apply the same principle to jobs, to opportunities, to careers, to just about anything. Job shadowing, for example, was not a thing when I was a student. Until my dad, my very wise dad, said to me, actually go to your local vet and spend some time there. And then when I finished studying, all of a sudden, all the schools are doing job shadowing. And I thought, oh, geez, look how far ahead my dad was in his concept. And, so I appreciated that because it made a massive difference to me. But that's part of how you clarify goals, how you clarify your decisions. And you can even take that even deeper than that and go down to your values, your own personal values. What makes you tick as an individual person? And those values need to be aligned with your goals. And if that's right, then your decision will be a lot easier. And even better than that, there'll be no regret when you make a decision because it's aligned with your values. And that's also something that I teach with coaching. A lot of people, again, there's no one that has ever taught you that unless you've known a coach and they've taken you through the life coaching journey.
Yeah, that's excellent. Thank you.
So how will you take, for example, I'm thinking, of a client that I had in the past. How will you take a person through if they still don't know what they want? Because maybe you get people that are, they lean towards maybe left-brained, right-brained, but you do get those individuals that kind of score very balanced, in all the different quadrants. So they can be good, in many different things. And I find, that they really struggle a lot to choose that one thing that they want to pursue. How would you go about, to help that person to pinpoint what they need to set their goal on, if they might be talented in many different type of careers and options?
Well, I think that for me, it sounds like you're describing analysis paralysis, and it's something that I often do to myself. I'm a perfectionist by nature, so sometimes I do overthink things, and I try and analyze things just like the cars, massive spreadsheet, right? Like complete overkill for some people, but it's just how I process, the information at hand. But at the end of the day, I can analyze all those cars as much as I like. It's not going to make any difference. I still have to do something about it. So for me, the answer there is action. So what is this person doing to help them get started? And for me, sometimes it's as simple as saying, get started. Find one position, get started with that. If you don't like it, move on to another, right? And then during that process, you'll make up your mind. And I'll give you a very simple example, which I actually read about fairly recently. A colleague of mine who's also a vet went off to a completely different tangent, and she's on to kind of online teaching material and putting up courses within the veterinary field still. But what was interesting is she made a comment and she says, it's not that I didn't enjoy being a vet, it's just that I enjoy this more. And I think with that kind of individual that you just described, Marika, you'll find that, yes, they might be good at everything equally, but they might enjoy the one thing more than the other. So it comes down to a feeling of fulfillment that they get, an emotional response, rather than purely an ability-based decision. We can all get lots of things done. I mean, Paul just described Richard Branson. Even if I don't know how to do it, I can learn because we have that ability, right? So I can pick up a job that I've never done before just because the person who's looking for somebody is desperate to fill that position. And I'll learn it on the fly because I can back myself to learn that quickly. So for me, the answer to that person would have been do something, right? Action. And action is the answer to fear. So for me, a lot of those indecisions come from fear. What if I do this and it doesn't work out? What if I do this and I don't get paid enough? What if I do this? What will my friends say? What will my mother say? Forget all that. Do it. You figure it out. It's your life. It's not theirs, right? Just do it.
I think the big one also is that people that overanalyze might feel that I have to make the perfect decision now. If I choose this one, it means that's the one. Instead of, like you said, try it. If you don't like it, then move, and make a different decision. But I think that analysis paralysis is because you want to make the ultimate decision, and that's the one, instead of, trying different things maybe.
Yeah, I think I try and sway away from perfection. As much as I'm a perfectionist, I've also learned that there's no such thing as perfection. And I think taking the decision to act rather than analyze, you're going to learn a lot more, pick up experience. The payoff is going to be so much bigger than making the perfect decision, in inverted commas. Because the perfect decision might be right now, this month, but maybe next month it would have been a different decision. So it's all context-based.
There's a great quote, don't let perfection get in the way of being good, or words to that effect.
Absolutely.
Where very often people will choose not to do anything because they have a fear of not being able to achieve perfection. Meanwhile, all that's done is put you in a position where you just don't do anything. You do nothing.
Absolutely.
And what can possibly be worse than doing nothing?
Yeah, I agree 100%.
So I've got a client who wants to get rid of the job they're in, or wants to get out of it. But because of the money, they are scared. Well, this person is scared to try something because it's completely different to what they're doing. And they want to go on their own, but they're scared to do it because they won't make the money that they're earning. What would you say to someone like that?
Well, there's two ways to approach it, and it really depends on their own context, their own situation that they're in. The one approach is to start slowly and build it up. And the other approach is to go head over heels, throw everything in it. Obviously, there's more fear associated with throwing everything at it.
Yeah.
Because then you're leaving what you currently know, which is your comfort zone, behind. And that's very scary, right? But at the same time, everything we currently want that we don't have is outside of our comfort zone, which is why I wrote the book in the first place.
Okay.
And so I think for me, if you get someone who's that afraid, it's not so much whether he should do it or not. I think he's already made up his mind that he wants to do it. It's already bugging him enough. It's in his mind. It's consuming him or her. And I think what they should do is at least start on a small scale and build it up, right? So that way they can decide and learn in the process how to get better and better and better. It's going to take more effort, absolutely. But I think the payoff will be much greater.
Thanks. That is a very, very excellent advice.
Doc, what would your advice be for someone who's facing an opportunity, but out of fear, they're not jumping, they're uncertain, and if they do take the plunge and jump, within a short time, it becomes apparent that it was the wrong decision? What's your advice there?
I think the first thing to do is not to beat yourself up about it if you're that person. I think we've all made wrong decisions. We've all made wrong turns somewhere along the line. And it's happened to all of us. It's happened to me. And inherently, I think what we'll end up doing is we'll end up being our worst critics and putting ourselves down rather than just getting a lesson out of it. So I think for me, what's more important is not that you made a mistake, because remember, nobody's perfect, right? So you are going to make mistakes. So for me, what's more important is what lesson did you get out of that? And how can you use that to grow and move forward? So there's that famous book of Failing Forward that was published quite a while ago. And you have to learn how to be kind to yourself. There's no such thing as making all the right decisions, always making the right turns, always being perfect at your job. There's no such thing, right? So that's why we talk about the journey is more valuable than the result, because it's in the journey where all the learning comes from. That's where your experience comes from. That's where your skills come from. That's where you build resilience. That's where you build your character. All of that comes from the journey. So if you can name any successful person in your mind, any mentor that you have, or any idol that you have in your head, and you look at their lives, every single one of them has made mistakes. So for me, don't focus on the mistake. Focus on what the learning is. What are you getting out of it?
Very valuable. Sure. Thank you so much. I think, this is a very valuable conversation for anyone listening when you feel stuck in your career or scared, to take on new opportunities, or whether you're a student, not knowing, or even if you're, in school, not certain, what to do. But I think, it takes a lot of self-reflection to decide what is it that you want, and then going for it and learn, as you go along.
100%.
Yeah, and sometimes I think simplicity is better, in that just take that first step, as the doctor was saying. And yes, I used this analogy recently with Zena, my wife, where we were facing some decisions, and I explained it as being on the monkey bar. I think they still call it the monkey bar. I hope that's not in any way politically incorrect these days, but at the jungle gym where you've got that ladder that runs horizontally quite high.
Yeah.
Sometimes in order to get to that next rung, you have to let go of the one you're on. You'll never
Yeah.
get there if
Mm.
you don't let go of the one that's currently keeping you. And
Mm.
you might do that and fall, but there's a very good chance that you will get to the next one. And we
Yeah.
were just using that as a metaphor, as it were, for how you should be living life in many ways. And we spend, I think, many moments looking back, looking behind us, even photographs. I mean, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but I said to Zena the other day, I think photographs can actually be horribly disabling. I think photography is a wonderful art and it's brought so much magic to the world. But going through photo albums and living in your past and thinking back to where you used to be and how you used to live and how good things were, and remember those good times. But I think it can be incredibly debilitating. And we do that to ourselves all the time. We look back
Yeah.
where we
Yeah.
should be looking ahead. That's a topic for another
Mm.
day, though.
Absolutely.
Cool. Thanks, Doctor. The name of your book again is?
A life outside your comfort zone.
Okay. And that is available directly through you or online?
Through Amazon.com. You just type in my surname. There's no other person with that surname on there. It'll bring up my book. It's got a Nautilus shell on the front page with the title on top, Life Outside Your Comfort Zone. If you just kind of page through it, there's a picture of me there as well. And yeah, you can buy it in color, black and white, or the digital version if you're that way inclined. But it's all available on Amazon.com.
Fantastic. And we also, of course, for all of our guests, we do put information in the description. So Mareka will take care of that when this content is uploaded. I think
Thank you.
that's where we will leave it for now. Thank you very much for joining us. Ladies, thank you. And thank you for watching. If you do have any comments, please do be kind enough as to leave those. And also, if you are in the coaching space, remember that there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes in finding coaches who we can share the stories of on the coaching hour. So if you are in the coaching space, or if you know of somebody who is in the coaching space and you think that they have a story to share, as many people do, I think most, if not everybody, does have a story to tell in some way, then please refer them to us. Tell them about what we are doing here on the coaching hour. We'd love to expand this to more and more people, to reach more and more people, but I think more importantly, to have more people telling their stories. So we look forward to hearing from you regarding that. I'm Paul Rotherham. It's been a pleasure having you here, and join us for the next one. Cheers for now.